Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and Apple released iOS 26.4 to the public over a week ago, and iOS 26.5 Beta 1 and Beta 1 re-release came out earlier this week and the other day. But there's even more to talk about since the iOS 26.5 Beta 1 is out what's new video. We'll talk about the latest Apple news, some new features, and the overall experience on both new and old devices as well. But not just my experience, but your experience based off the YouTube community poll on the post page, where at the time of this video there's over 13,000 votes and 199 comments. I've gone over all the comments to determine what the update is like for most of us, so be sure to stick around toward the end of the video where I'll read some of your comments as well. And if you want to jump to any specific part of the video, be sure to check out the chapters in the description below. And in a very rare and unheard of move, for the first time ever, Apple has also released iOS 18.7.7 to all iOS 18 supported devices that were still on a version of iOS 18. We'll talk more about that in a bit though. Now, WWDC is a couple months away, and those who applied to attend WWDC received a notification if they were invited or not on Thursday. Apple has a lottery system for those that actually apply, and then they select who can attend. So if we go over to their website here, you'll see you had the option to join us for a special event at Apple Park, and those who applied have been notified whether or not they've been accepted. However, media invites to different people of the press go out later, closer to the event itself. Apple wrapped up its 50th anniversary celebration this past week at Apple Park, where they had different artists there, such as Paul McCartney, and they also had previous Apple employees there, such as Scott Forstall. So lots of big celebration that went on and concluded this past week. Apple on their homepage actually had a tribute to that, and they even showed off some prototypes in an interview with the Wall Street Journal. So the original iPhone prototype, what looks to be an iPod mini, and some others. I wish they would have focused more on those, but Apple typically doesn't look at the past. They don't even have a museum for it or anything else, and they just focus on the future. But this was a rare glimpse into some of the older things that Apple has worked on. Now, with the new MacBook Pro that released with the M5 Pro and M5 Max a couple weeks ago, Apple of course included a charger with that, thankfully, in most countries. And to adapt to different countries' standards here, like we have in the United States, for example, there's this little thing here. If we remove this, you can adapt this to other plugs. However, in certain countries, some people are actually seeing it where this has changed, where you typically could put an extension cable here that Apple used to include. You'll see there's a little notch here, so it should work for me, but others are seeing this shape that has changed and you can no longer use that accessory. Thankfully, I have the current one that will work with what I already have, but for some people, they won't be able to use the extension cable that they may have had before. This past week, the third generation iPad Air with Wi-Fi is now considered vintage. On Apple's website for obtaining service for your Apple product after an expired warranty, if you scroll down, you can see all of the different devices that are considered vintage. And if we go to iPad, you'll see iPad Air Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi and cellular wasn't on sale as long, but now the iPad Air 3 with Wi-Fi is now discontinued and considered vintage. So that's just something to be aware of as they continually do this. It was released in 2019. Apple Payments has now turned off purchases in Russia. You'll see Apple posted a support document about it where it says about billing for Apple subscriptions and digital purchases in Russia. As of April 1st, 2026, payment processing is no longer available for purchases made on the App Store or other Apple media services in Russia. So this might affect your existing subscriptions, and if you don't have an existing balance there won't be a way to update it. So unfortunately for those in Russia, they won't be able to do this, but supposedly this is in order to comply with Russian government laws. So that's something that is unfortunate, but has changed, and you'll no longer be able to use those services after your subscription expires and you have no payment methods. As far as new features this week, well, there's a few to talk about since the iOS 26.3 is out what's new video. And if we go into the clock, and maybe we go to our alarms here, then we go to our sleep and wake up alarms. So if you're using that feature, go into change, there's a new option here for always play on iPhone. If we toggle this on, it says when you wear your Apple Watch to bed, your alarm will play on your iPhone and Apple Watch. Prior to this, there were some issues with alarming, and maybe that had to do with the Apple Watch, or maybe the Apple Watch thought it was on someone's wrist and didn't sound the alarm on the iPhone. So hopefully this resolves the issue if people were having that issue. So we'll see it says change the schedule. We'll change it entirely and make sure that's always on for me. The next feature has to do with pairing accessories with Apple devices. So for example, maybe you want to pair a Magic Trackpad, a Magic Keyboard, or even Magic Mouse that many people don't like. You can pair it now easily by connecting it just like you would with a Mac. For example, what we'll do is plug it into the bottom, and I actually like this Magic Mouse, so as long as I don't drop it here, let's go ahead and plug it in, and it should pair automatically. Typically it's paired with my Mac. Let's see if we're paired now. There we go. It says your mouse is wirelessly connected to this iPad. So it connects on its own. If I unplug it here, it should just work now. So you'll see it now works. I can use it like I would on a Mac the exact same way. So it's a super easy way to pair it, and I'm glad to see they've brought that along. Another feature has to do with transferring to Android. So if we go into our settings, we go to General, scroll to the bottom, go to Transfer or Reset iPhone. And then if we're using Transfer to Android, there's a new option here that will allow you to transfer your messages from no messages up to 30 days, 1 year, or all of your messages. So if you're going to transfer it to maybe an Android phone, it will then carry those across based on what you prefer. Now, if we go into our settings, go to General, then scroll down to where we have Keyboard, then go to Keyboards, Add New Keyboard. There's a new option here. So if we scroll down here, down under I, you'll see a new option for Inuktitut. So that's an option here that was added with 26.5, and hopefully I'm saying that properly. Within the Books app, it seems based on the code that there's new mentions of awards that will be in the app. Probably toward the end of the year, how Apple does that with music and other things, but we should see that hopefully in the future. Also, there's a couple other things worth mentioning that have to do with notification forwarding. So if we go back into our settings here, this time around, we'll go into our notifications. So go down to notifications, we have notification forwarding. So that's something they added, but they also added some additional options in the EU, such as proximity pairing with devices similar to how AirPods work. So if you bring AirPods nearby, you open them up, you can pair them with proximity just like that. These are not paired with this device right away. It took a second there to show up, but you'll see that it shows up like that, and that should work with third-party devices, along with live activities for third-party wearables as well. There's also another mention of a feature in the magnifier in the code. So you'll see on X from Aaron P613, it says Magnifier has been updated with new features. You'll be able to use Magnifier after your parent or guardian approves your request. I haven't seen this yet when it comes to Magnifier, but it looks like it could be something that's there in the future. When it comes to other bugs and bug fixes, I mentioned there were quite a few listed on a Reddit forum. However, it seems like that person removed them after they were questioned where they got those. They could have been AI or something else, we don't really know, so I'm not really sure that they updated anything there. Also, one other thing I wanted to mention is if we go into settings, there's an odd bug here. There are some bug fixes as well, but if we go into settings, we go to notifications, and then maybe we go down to any one of these notifications and turn this off and back on, you'll see that it sort of glitches the way it actually turns on and off. So you'll see that here. So it sort of switches over and animates fairly slowly. So that's an odd bug that's there, something that still remains. When it comes to other features, if we take a look at Apple's release notes for iOS 26.5 Beta 1, there are some new features for StoreKit, and then they've fixed some other issues as well, and there's remaining known issues as well. We'll talk about bugs and bug fixes in a moment, but they've resolved the issue with Unity and Kaleidoscope wallpapers where they would fail to install or couldn't be removed from the wallpaper gallery. I talked about that though in the What's New video. Now, we did have that release where Apple allowed people that were originally on iOS 18 to still update to the latest version, as it seems about 25% are still on iOS 18. So they recognized that some people didn't want to install it, and then they updated it here so you can see all of the security updates that were installed with it. You can see it on Apple's security website where it says available for iPhone XR, and it goes all the way to the iPhone 16e, along with the iPads that support iPadOS 18. Unfortunately, there's no way to downgrade. They did not make files available to do that, but they did patch those devices that were already on some version of iOS 18 or before. Under iOS 18.7.7, you can see there are a ton of different security patches. This is also on top of what you might have had or what you may have missed with prior versions of iOS 18 that weren't released. So tons of different things here. And of course, this fixes a lot of issues, some very serious ones that some people experienced. So in particular, the Dark Sword vulnerability, where other users could actually hack into your phone, which happened in various parts of the world, such as Turkey, Ukraine, Malaysia, and Saudi Arabia. So that patched it. It's very important. So if you're on iOS 18, any version, make sure you update to it, as there's not been a negative thing said about iOS 18. But we'll talk about that in the experience in just a moment. As far as app updates this week, if we take a look at the App Store, Apple updated Apple Sports a week ago to version 3.9. It says now MLB fans can see the probable starting pitcher for each game in advance. Also, car numbers have been added to NASCAR leaderboards, making it even easier to keep up with your favorite driver during a race. So if this is available in your country, make sure that you update here. Now, as far as the weekly Apple tip update or the weekly iOS tip, one thing I wanted to mention that I've been trying out is within settings under battery, in adaptive power, You'll see under power mode here, I turned off adaptive power as it seems to have less lag. It's almost like it sort of downscales the processor and then gives it a second to ramp up so that it's smoother overall. So that's something I would recommend trying. It's less of a tip and more of try it out and see if it makes a difference. As for me personally, I haven't seen adaptive power make much of a power difference, but let me know your experience in the comments below. Now, before we talk about the overall experience, the iPhone 18 Pro is the next iPhone that's less than 6 months away. Apple is working to make millions of them, get them ready for launch in September typically if they do the same thing this year. And according to Instant Digital on Weibo, the 18 Pro models will not be available in black again this year. There will be no black variant, but Apple will likely have a silver and possibly a red color to go along with this. So hopefully we see some new colors, but why they're not doing black, because I know a lot of people like it. They seem to be doing midnight with their AirPods Max 2 and other things. I would love to see them bring back space black or maybe jet black even. When it comes to iOS 27, it may bring an update to the keyboard. The latest information from Mark Gurman says that Apple has been testing a keyboard with enhanced autocorrect. They recently fixed the keyboard in iOS 26.4, but improved autocorrect is definitely something we need. Maybe we'll have more options, maybe more keyboard layouts as well. And of course, that would go along with Siri 2.0. So maybe with the refresh there with iOS 27, we'll see something like that. As far as releases this week, Apple stopped signing iOS 26.3.1, meaning you can no longer downgrade to that version. Typically when they do that, we'll see an update within a couple weeks, so we could see an iOS 26.4.1 to patch additional issues. We'll talk about some of those issues in a moment though. Of course, like I mentioned before, we got iOS 18.7.7 for all iOS 18 supported devices that were still on iOS 18. And then we also got AirPods Max 2 updates. So I have some AirPods Max 2 here. I did a video on them, and let's take them out of the case and I'll show you the update version number here. So I've been using these a little bit. So let's go into our settings here. We'll go back and go into AirPods Max 2, scroll to the bottom, and you'll see I'm on the updated version of 8E251. What it fixes specifically, we don't really know. Apple didn't really say. You'll see it says support.apple.com. Basically, if we scroll down, it says bug fixes and other improvements. As I've said before, I would love to see better notes here telling us what they've actually fixed on all of these releases. This really doesn't help us out or let us know if something's been fixed that we've been having issues with. So hopefully they give more information in the future. They did a great job on the iOS 26.4 release notes though. Other than that, we did get new firmware updates for AirTags 2 to version 3.0.45. It updates on its own. There's no way to force it. It just sort of updates as it's nearby. And then also, of course, we're waiting for the next version. So like I mentioned, iOS 26.4.1 could be in the works. There's no confirmation of that yet, but if we do see it, it would be a couple weeks from now typically. Also, iOS 26.5 Beta 2 could be as soon as Monday. We don't really know at this point as we had Beta 1 re-release, but maybe we'll get Beta 2 on Monday. However, it could be another week until we see that as well. We don't really know at this point. Of course, iOS 26.5 could release to the public toward the end of April or early May, and iOS 27 Beta 1 is what we're looking the most forward to. We should see it for the first time on June 8th at WWDC 2026, and of course we'll have that along with not just those betas, but iOS 26 betas and other things all the way up until September when we typically see a public release. So hopefully we will get that stability with iOS 27, but we're still only a few months away. When it comes to the overall experience, well, I've been using my AirPods Pro 3 quite a bit, but of course I've been using the AirPods Max 2 as well. So far I've had very little connectivity issues. However, using it with a Mac, it still does sort of lag sometimes, especially with the latest update. Connecting to HomePods, for example, there was a delay from the Mac to the HomePods. So some odd issues going on with Bluetooth, but the AirPods Pro 3 when using them with a singular device seem to work fine, and I really have had no issues with them. AirPods Max are great, especially if you use them with lossless mode plugged in directly to USB-C. So that's probably what I'll do for editing from now on. Now, when it comes to the iOS 18.7.7 experience, as I've mentioned before, this is a very rare release, or really the first time we've seen Apple push an update to devices that support the current version but are on older versions. We haven't seen this before, or at least in many, many years, and I think this is a great move by Apple, but I do think they should allow people to downgrade that want to do that. They should provide the IPSW files, and if people want to downgrade, since we have the latest security updates, I don't see the harm in that, but they're not allowing it at this point. But so far, every person who's on iOS 18.7.7, based on the YouTube community poll comments, has either praised the update or expressed relief that they were on it, and there's not a single comment where people have any issues with it whatsoever. Of course, it can take time to measure, but most people are very happy with it. With iOS 26.4, I used it full-time on this device. Now I'm on 26.5, and it seemed very stable for me. The biggest complaint for people really is battery life, but it seems to be very hit or miss. It's about 50% depending on who you ask, and that's the number one thing people are mentioning. But the things that have been fixed, or the keyboard issue is finally fixed, and that is not autocorrect. They didn't fix autocorrect, they fixed mistyping. So the issue really was, maybe you were typing this is an iPhone 17 Pro Max on iOS 26.5 Beta 1 re-release. And typically when you would type like this, if you pressed a key, maybe I typed the letter T, sometimes it would mistype the letter next to it, such as an R, even though I pressed the correct key. That's what they actually fixed. And you'll see I mistyped this here. This was on me. I keep doing this, but I mistyped that. But the actual mispresses are what they've fixed. They did not fix the autocorrect issues. So that's still something they need to work on, and again, could be coming with iOS 27. CarPlay connectivity seems to be much better for most people. That remains true, but is still an issue for some. And as I mentioned before, AirPods Pro 3 connectivity seems to be fixed. Also, a couple other people mentioned that the alarm screen is now working properly when trying to stop an alarm, and also RAM management has been better for most. Now, it's not perfect, it's never going to be perfect, but if you open up an app, go into another app, go back into that app, as long as it's not too many of them and they're not intensive, it should stay loaded in memory. If it can't, such as YouTube, this often reloads. It didn't this time, but it often reloads. That could be the app, it could be any number of things here. Again, with bugs, the number one issue is battery life issues, but again, people that have battery life issues typically will comment more than those who don't, but it seems to be about 50% at this point. CarPlay connectivity is still an issue for some, and the odd bug is MagSafe charging. So if someone is using MagSafe wireless charging here, so if we plug it in, you'll see it charges. Some people are saying it just stops randomly, and the only way to get it to work again is to reboot their phone. The wallpaper bug is still there for iOS 26.4, and there's still some visual glitches on older devices mostly. I even have 26.4 on this iPhone 11 here, so if we unlock, you can see it here, and visual glitches and things seem to be okay on this device, but it looks pretty good on iPhone 11. As far as how it is on older devices, we'll come back to this in a moment. iPhone 17, 17 Pro, 17 Pro Max, and iPhone Air, it's mixed depending on the issue. Those who have battery issues are more vocal about it, but most say it's a great experience. iPhone 16 models are mostly positive experiences as well. With iPhone 15 models, people are reporting bad issues such as battery or glitching issues. The same is true with iPhone 14 and 13, but 13 users say that it's typically a smooth experience but have some typing issues. iPhone 12 also reports similar issues to iPhone 15. However, the iPhone 11 seems to be fast and smooth for most people. That seems to be a little odd since iPhone 11 is older, but it seems to be smoother and faster for the majority of people. So what the reason for that is, we're not really sure. We'll go in here. You'll see that's the first time I've opened music here. It seems smooth, and the overall experience is much better. When it comes to iOS 26.5 Beta 1 and the re-release experience, battery has definitely improved. The UI is smooth, even on older phones, with the exception of when you start it up. So if you unlock the phone, slide up, scroll, sometimes it's very glitchy. But if I turn off adaptive power, it seems to fix that issue. The re-release was possibly again to fix some Face ID issues, and app launches were slow for some. So for example, we'll have to see if the re-release fixed that, but going into different apps or third-party apps, some people say that it was slow. For example, maybe we'll go into Home here. Seems nice and fast. But again, some people were saying it was slower than others. Also, the UI can stutter, just like I've shown you. When it comes to the overall heat and thermals, the phone has stayed nice and cool over the time I've used Beta 1 and Beta 1 re-release. It seems pretty good, but let's go ahead and check benchmarks, and then we'll check the thermals as well. As far as overall heat on iOS 26.5 Beta 1 version 2, on iPhone 17 Pro Max, we're right around 31.5 degrees Celsius, and on iOS 26.4, again on a 17 Pro Max, we're right around almost 31 degrees Celsius. So staying very well managed, nice and cool overall. Let's wait for it to complete and we'll take a look at benchmarks. I've run benchmarks a couple times on both devices, and you'll see on the left with iOS 26.4, we have 10,020 for multi-core, 3,890 for single-core. On the iOS 26.5 Beta 1 device, we have 3,885 for single-core, 9,997 for multi-core. They're definitely close enough, well within the margin of error, and both are performing quite well. When it comes to overall battery life, let's first take a look at iOS 26.4. So thanks to Abhishek for sending this in. Thanks for his consistency. It helps us week to week. This is an iPhone 16e with 99% battery health set to an 85% charge limit. It's on iOS 26.4, and you'll see he had 8 hours of screen on time, 52 minutes of screen off time, with 89% usage of the battery. That's quite good overall, definitely better than I would expect for an iPhone 16e. When it comes to iOS 26.5 Beta 1, I've been using it full-time on the 17 Pro Max along with Beta 1 version 2, and if we take a look at settings, battery, and battery health, you'll see my capacity is at 100% with 53 cycles. If we take a look at actual usage, the best usage I had was here on Tuesday with 5 hours and 19 minutes of screen active time, 53 minutes of screen idle time, using 76% of the battery. However, you'll see I charged it multiple times while driving, so this makes a difference. I wish Apple would show us the option, or at least give us the option, to only show it as far as what it used off of battery. But you'll see the other day, 2 hours and 33 minutes, and of course with iOS 26.5 Beta 1 version 2, it will take a few days to measure, so we can talk more about that next week. If you're wondering if you should install iOS 26.4 or 26.5 betas, iOS 26.4 is definitely the one I would go with for now since it's not a beta. It seems to be very smooth for most people, but do give it a week after you install it for it to improve. It does seem to take a while, and of course some apps could cause issues with that, but in general it seems to be generally smooth. However, if you're on an earlier version, just keep in mind you're vulnerable to some security issues if you don't update, so I would definitely recommend updating. With iOS 26.5 betas, if you're testing it out, of course, update. If you're maybe on Beta 1, update to Beta 1 version 2, but other than that, I would probably hold off until at least Beta 3 or so at this point. Overall, speed and everything else seems to be nice and fluid with it, and that's the same with all the devices here. Again, with iPhone 11, very smooth and fluid. If we go back and forth here, you'll see ProMotion on the 17 Pro Max is nice and smooth on 26.5. You can see it here, the difference between 60 and 120 hertz or 90 hertz, depending on what it ramps up and down to, but it seems to be much better overall. Also storage, let's take a look at that. So if we go into our settings, go to General and iPhone Storage, we'll compare it to 26.4 here. And you'll see on iOS 26.5 Beta 1 version 2, it's using 21.95 gigabytes. That's compared to 21.76 gigabytes. Very similar overall. It's not stacking on top of that storage when you install a beta. It's overwriting the old OS, so you're not continually compounding those different updates. When it comes to system data, this can vary greatly. It can go anywhere from 1 gigabyte up to 60 gigabytes and come back down depending on what it needs. Now, as far as the overall experience and what you had to say, let's take a look at some of your comments. TTS TV 21 said, iOS 26.4 is running amazing on my iPhone 11, and everything as far as voiceover, battery, Wi-Fi, opening apps, everything is fast and snappy, and I'm happy they fixed the keyboard bug. Lokman Syed said, I've been using iOS 26.4 ever since the betas on my 17 Pro Max. Overall, it seems to be a great experience, however, I am experiencing some bugs. YouTube just suddenly stops when playing a video, the keyboard sometimes freezes in messages in Safari, and a few other bugs, but those are the ones that kept showing up. However, besides the performance seems to be very hold, battery life has just been incredible. I'm getting through the day with no problem on my 17 Pro Max. The Banana Man 234 says, iOS 26.4 on iPhone 17 base model runs really well and battery life feels better than the previous versions, although iPadOS 26.4 is still a bit glitchy and has some visual bugs on my Gen 9 iPad, although battery is definitely better on this version. Chris Parmer 4983 said, I've been using iOS 26.4 on my iPhone 17 Pro. Battery life has been good overall. The standby battery drain has been great. I easily get all-day battery life with moderate use. Performance has been smooth and snappy, a few minor bugs, but not anything major. Good update overall, I would recommend for anyone with newer devices. Caracas7326 said, as far as iOS 26 goes, 26.4 is the best so far. Battery life is improved and overall good experience. There are still bugs, but not as many as there used to be. Especially on my iPhone 17, it is really good and I would like to see Gemini getting integrated in 26.5. It would be much appreciated. Jeff V71 says, first of all, loving the upgrade from 16E to 17E. Also loving iOS 26.5 Beta 1 with improved battery life and smooth operation. PearlsMe8561 said, 26.4 on 17 Pro Max. 16 Pro Max seems to run smoother than the last update. Battery is draining more on 17 Pro Max versus 16 Pro Max. Thanks for the video. Luke Matroka said, I'm on iOS 26.4 on my iPhone 16. Battery life has been hot garbage. To be honest, I feel like I'm plugging in my phone every hour and it just drops so quick. With iOS 18.7.7, this was very unexpected and a rare move from Apple that I hope they continue into the future to provide updates for those that want to stay on previous versions and don't want iOS 26. We could be seeing a change here, and I hope to see them carry this forward. With iOS 26.4, it is a meaningful step forward this time from earlier iOS 26 releases. Apple fixed the keyboard errors, CarPlay improved for some, and devices like the iPhone 11, 17 Pro, and 16 Pro Max are having a genuinely good experience. But battery drain remains a widespread and serious complaint across too many devices to ignore. So it seems to be an issue on mid-range phones and older Pro models, and bugs like phantom touches, app crashes, MagSafe failures, and UI stutters suggest the update wasn't really ready for everyone just yet. However, it could still be processing in the background, so we'll have to see what it's like within another week. With iOS 26.5 Beta 1, I would say so far, of course, it's incomplete. It's an early beta, and a handful of beta testers in the comments are reporting notably better battery life, with one user cutting their daily battery consumption nearly in half. The smoothness is generally positive on the devices that people have mentioned, but the main concerns are slower third-party app launches, and on the 17 Pro Max, still having UI stutter seems a bit odd since it's supposed to be such a fast processor. It's a beta though, so none of this is really surprising, but the battery improvement is the most promising part in the entire comment section. Hopefully Beta 2 brings some more changes though and features and big improvements, and hopefully we finally see Siri 2.0. So that's everything with iOS 26.4, iOS 26.5 Beta 1 version 2, and iOS 18.7.7. Let me know what version you're using in the comments below and how your overall experience is going for you. Of course, I'll link this wallpaper in the description like I normally do, and if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe, and if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.